Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Look at me moving around here with incredible accuracy. This is because this video is sponsored by Rococo. Today we will explore the world of motion capture. The great people over at Rococo sent me their full motion capture suit for me to try out. It's a full body suit which is sized for each user and it doesn't connect with any cables, so you are free to move around and easily record motion capture data that can then quickly be transferred to your preferred 3D software and ultimately onto your 3D characters. I was also sent the Rococo smart gloves that record full hand gestures and finger movements, and that works perfectly together in combination with the suit. Now that I have such a great tool to work with, I want to try to implement this into some form of animation. So for this video, I thought it would be cool to record a bunch of different movements that I can then apply to different type of characters within one scene and have them all sort of interact with each other. Since it's so easy to record mocap data with this suit, I should be able to record a varied selection of movements that can then be applied to all those different characters. I've made some base models of characters before that I intended to use as background crowds for upcoming projects, so by customizing them I should be able to build a small population for this specific shot. First though, I want to build a space for them to exist in, our stage to set the scenario in, so I made a rough model in Cinema 4D of a bridge crossing a river. This will limit where in the scene I can put in the characters and allow me to figure out what each one might be up to. I rendered out this simple geometry as a hardware render from Cinema 4D to have some guidelines of perspective and composition for the shot. I then started painting over it in Photoshop, adding colors, lighting and detail. As I intend to bring it back into 3D later to get the characters in, I will match the layout here quite closely to this 3D model to make sure that the workflow is a bit smoother. I thought it could be cool if this bridge is quite an old stone bridge and that the people we put on it are perhaps dock workers. And maybe we set this in an old settings, maybe in the 40s or something like this. So before I animate any characters, I want to get the background to a good place so I can fully envision what could happen here. On its own, the bridge and the ground are quite barren and uninteresting, so now it's time to populate it with a few objects. Painting in some wooden boxes scattered around the place will add some interest. Maybe also a bucket of paint and a few other things can add to the sort of worker vibe. Before I fill in too much, I think it's time we start looking at what the characters actually might be doing. So let's look at what we have here and figure out what can go into it. I want some of my characters to react to something, so I think we can add a car drive through the scene and then have the workers on the bridge maybe move out of the way as it passes. Then we can have a few other people spread out across the bridge, going about their own business. So that's the plan for now. Let's put on the suit and record a few movements. The suit is full of small sensors that record all the movements of my joints. As I act things out, I can in real time preview what I'm doing on my monitor through Rococo Studios. I just have to begin by calibrating my suit in a straight pose with my arms along my body, and then I'm free to move around and record. It really is super easy to set up and you can quickly create animations that would otherwise take a long time to animate if I were to do this by hand, for example. I found I got my best results when I was relatively stationary, not running around too much. Characters sort of conversing, moving their arms around are easy to capture and almost always looks good. I often make a few attempts at recording my actions as I find that not every recording will be a successful take, so just doing it a few times often covers it. You might have to compensate for any slight offsets it might have to your motion, and work with its strength where you find that it works best. I'm using the gloves in combination with the suit here, as I find them to actually make the mocap data of the arms a bit better as well. I think they help to orient the hands better, as it's adding more sensors to the data, which also makes the arms align more accurately. Here are some of the takes that I recorded. As I mentioned earlier, I created this base character mesh a while back and thought it might come in handy here again. The model actually just has mitten hands, so no fingers, but I will for sure explore the full hand gestures more in the future, as I have these gloves as well. In Cinema 4D, you can easily pair up a rigged character with the mocap data from the suit. This means I can quickly try out the different motions I captured using this character. I've made a simple way to texture my dude here by just painting the front and the back in Photoshop. It's not the cleanest way of UV mapping, but hey, it's working. So this way I can create a few variations for the different characters. As they will be dock workers, I'm thinking a mix of working clothes and maybe in quite neutral colors. I will also need a car. Luckily, I modeled an old-timer not too long ago actually, exploring how I could render stylized cars that can go into my films. So let's drop that in here as it fits into the era. If you want access to this car, you can get it through my Patreon page, along with the base mesh of the characters that I have here. You can find the link to that below. Now it's all about arranging the scene with all these assets. I really like how these two character recordings play well together here. One guy warning the other, and then we see them both make way for the car to drive by. I'm missing a few people walking, and I didn't manage to get a good take of that looking convincing yet. That's something I want to explore more using the suit, see if I can get a good walk cycle going. Luckily, Rococo Studios have a motion library with a ton of assets that you can use. I found a few good walk cycles there that worked well for the scene. For the river running under the bridge, I used the same method and texture that I used for this shot, which I made a video about a while back. There's also a tutorial on my Patreon page about how one can exactly achieve this water effect. It's almost always the last 10% that takes the longest when making a scene like this, kind of making sure it looks okay in most places. And if I find that I need to add in detail somewhere, or something might be missing, I have to go back and do that at this point. Also, as this scene is heavily stylized, it comes with a bit of a workaround method when it comes to rendering, so it's never really as straightforward as just hitting render and calling it done. Some of the elements are purely painted, with shadows baked into them, like the background, while others are fully 3D, like the characters. I tend to render a few passes for the different elements, such as color pass and shadow pass, and sometimes individual mattes for specific objects. And then when it's needed, I might have to individually tweak certain things in post. For example, I want the shadows of the characters to join the shadow of my painted background. Shadows should not overlap and multiply one another, so that's a job I have to solve in After Effects. Also, I don't want the shading on my characters to be as intense as the cast shadow that they put onto the floor. I know that's not physically accurate, but I just prefer the shadows to be a bit lighter on the character models themselves. I'm really quite happy about how this shot is turning out. This is not part of any bigger project or anything, it's just a standalone piece. But sometimes these little explorations are some of my favorite things to work on. I feel like it could sit well in an opening sequence of a story, maybe as an establishing shot of a location where we get a glimpse of who the people are that inhabit it. So here's the final shot. Do check out Rococo if you want to find out more about the suit I was using in this video. There'll be a link to that below. Thanks to them for sending that over. It's been a cool tool to work with. Also thanks to my Patreon for their continued support. Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and check out the Patreon if you're interested in more videos. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.